Coming up on this week's FAS TV. With lambing season fast approaching, SAC Consulting nutritionist Lorna discusses the key nutritional challenges facing sheep farmers currently, touching on the recent challenges of wintry weather, as well as the key things to consider in preparation for the start of lambing. She also gives an insight into how lambing is going at home with their early lambing flock. As well as nutritional information from Lorna, we also hear from Mary Hall, a farm vet from the Galedin Veterinary Group.
Today we are back at my family farm, Smail and Mains, where we are starting, well, through our January lambing actually. We're getting through them fairly fast at the moment, which is quite nice. So I'm down here just having a look and starting to think about preparing for lambing for the rest of the season's flocks as well, as I've got a pretty key role as a beef and sheep nutritionist with SAC Consulting. So we're very much started lambing and we're at the stage where we're thinking about what do we do to prepare for lambing going forward for the rest of the country's flocks also. As we're filming this, we're in January. A lot of the country's flocks have started scanning now, especially those lambing kind of March, and we're maybe starting to scan for those kind of mid-March, April time fairly soon as well. So we're starting to find out how successful tupping was, and where we're going to go next. Some of us have even started lambing some early lambs, so there is lambs on the ground, which is quite exciting. So far so good as well, which is really positive. So yeah, it's definitely a time for any kind of sheep keeper to sit and reflect on performance, think about how things are going and prepare for what's coming up next. We've got a few busy months ahead, so lots to think about, lots to do. So at this stage, as we are kind of hitting kind of just pre-scanning, scanning stage, we need to start thinking ahead. So scanning provides sheep farmers a really good opportunity to sit and reflect on performance. How successful was tupping? So if we did have a really successful tupping, like what was different this year? What made it successful? Did we have a lot of grass at tupping time? So ewes were perhaps on a really, really good plane of nutrition around tupping, and that's what's led to a really good scanning. Was it that we'd put in pre-tupping checks? Or if scanning maybe wasn't as expected, what was different? Were ewes not quite in the condition we needed them to be? Was there something different with genetics? Were all the tups working? It's a real time for reflection for a lot of sheep flocks. It also gives us time to think about what's next. Obviously, after scanning, we know how many lambs we've got coming, and the aim to that is to really optimise the amount we can wean at the end of the day. So it's trying to get as many of those lambs right to the point of sale or the point of breeding. So we're trying to think how we can optimise performance. So we need to start thinking about feeding plans. Have we got a feeding plan in place? Have we looked at forage analysis already? Do we have enough forage to take us right through to the end of the season? There's quite a lot to start thinking about preparing ahead. It's also a really good time if you're thinking about doing something new or different at lambing time. It's a good time to start thinking about, what will that change be and can we put it in place and how's it going to work? January's brought us a lot of challenges. We're down here in the Scottish borders. We've been quite lucky this season so far, apart from quite a few hard frosts. Touch wood, we haven't seen some of the snow we've seen up north. Up north have definitely seen quite adverse conditions. We've seen feet's worth of snowdrifts and really challenging conditions for farmers up that way. There's a lot of things that farmers can consider to maybe prepare ahead, and it is difficult, and in those cases we can only ever do the best that we can by our flocks. But some things to kind of think about just to even ease the challenge a little bit would be if we know that there is a lot of snow or particularly hard weather coming, such as flooding or such likes. It's not always just snow that comes and challenges us. We can think about trying to move sheep to better pasture that's maybe closer to the farm, easier access for feeding, thinking about sheltered areas maybe, or even moving forage closer to the sheep potentially. So is it a case that we put a few bales out nearer the sheep so we're not having to trudge through challenging conditions to get feed to them? Another thing to consider, and this is actually kind of a helpful point for a lot of flocks, is even just training new lambs or gimmers that are coming into the flock to eat a little bit of concentrate, even if we're on a completely forage-based system, training them to eat a little bit of concentrate means that if we really, really need it or weather becomes really difficult and we've not got a lot of other feed available, they know what it is, so they'll still come in and eat it, which can be a real beneficial thing just to kind of help mitigate the challenges, make sure that we're not reducing feed supply during quite a crucial time. When that weather hit, a lot of people were kind of in mid-pregnancy, so we're looking at placental development, a lot of key things happening within that ewe, even though her requirements are at maintenance and we're just trying to keep body condition score on her at that stage. There is a lot of things that are happening in that ewe which can actually affect whether we have viable embryos and lifetime performance of that lamb as well. So just try to think ahead, prep as much as we can. Is there easy wins? It is a challenge, it is difficult. We can't always get everywhere we need, and you know, there is a lot of time just in able to get feed out, to defrost water troughs, things like that. So it's challenging, but in the end of the day, as livestock keepers, we can only try our best, and that's what we need to always try and strive to do. Coming out of long periods of harsh weather, obviously ewes have been quite challenged. Even if we've got feed to them, they've had to look at a slightly different feeding plan than perhaps they were on before. So condition at this stage is really important. So monitoring body condition, are ewes at target condition? Have they maybe lost a little bit? So just kind of getting your hands on the backs of ewes if possible, checking that they're still maintaining, and then just putting factors in place to try and make sure that we can just keep them going through. So it might be, if they've been particularly challenged, we just need to think about extra feeding for a little bit longer. Obviously within reason, we don't want ewes getting over fat or lambs developing too much so that we have large lambs at lambing time and gives us other challenges. But just making sure we're supporting them as much as possible. And then also just thinking about kind of where we're going. If we're going to put them on silage anyway, or we're introducing feed, we maybe don't want to strip that away to put it back again. So try to keep consistent. We have March lambing ewes on the farm as well, and we scanned them just after Christmas, so we're now in the post-scanning stage. They're a bit not quite as far on in pregnancy as these girls just behind me. So we're now at that kind of post-scanning stage, which a lot of flocks will be in also. So once we've got our scanning results, we need to start thinking about when we need to feed, so that'll depend on our forage analysis. If we've got really good forage, we can possibly take ewes up to kind of about 6 weeks pre-lambing, or even 4 weeks if we have really, really good silage in front of us. If not, we might need to start thinking about introducing a concentrate or another feed source a wee bit earlier. So it's really going to depend on the forage available, what we need to put in, but starting to plan ahead with that process. Also just preparing anything we need to do. So thoughts post-scanning should also turn to actually where are we putting ewes and lambs after lambing? Like, are we needing to rest pastures? How's grass growth looking? Are we needing to then take some ewes off mid-pregnancy pastures just to make sure we've got some available for after lambing time as well? So thinking about measuring grass as well. And then again, that maintenance of body condition. Post-scanning, we don't want to handle ewes too much. They're in late pregnancy. You don't want to be causing additional harm or stress to the ewe at this stage. So keeping things consistent, but we still want to make sure they're maintaining condition. We're putting enough nutrients in front of them. I think as a nutritionist, I'm quite aware of the requirements for putting on ewes, and we are asking them quite a lot. A nice little fact I like to bring up, and I think anybody that's been to any workshop with me will probably be bored of hearing this, but a ewe kind of about a week before lambing will roughly run about 17 miles a day plus maintain herself. So it's quite a lot to be asking to be running 17 miles a day. So we need to make sure we've got the nutrition in front of them to do that, and checking that and keeping that maintained is pretty important post-scanning. As part of my role as a nutritionist within SAC, I also oversee quite a lot of the forage sampling. We've had quite a lot of silages come in through all the offices right across Scotland this year, so I've just collated all the data, which is quite interesting to look at. As part of that, we've noticed that silages are a lot drier this year, which perhaps suits sheep more than cattle. Sheep quite like a dry forage. However, due to kind of slightly stressful growing season, if we look back at spring last year, we hadn't seen rain for quite a long time in many parts of the country, which put quite a lot of stress on grazing, slowed down our growing period quite a lot in spring, which meant that when grass did get water, it came to head quite fast. And with that, we've lost quite a lot of energy out of our cuts. We have seen quite good protein though, so protein's up about 12.2% on average, so a bit higher than we've usually seen. Typically, we've seen protein around 11% in previous years, so it's nice to see that rising a little bit, takes a bit of pressure off other feed sources. But energy is definitely our biggest concern. We've dropped from an average of about 10.5 ME to about 10.1 ME this year, so looking at getting energy into them is going to be the biggest challenge and probably the first limiting factor in most rations. So yeah, definitely looking at your forage analysis. If we are deficient in something, we need to be getting it from somewhere else and looking at where we can get that from. Especially when ewes in late pregnancy are that dependent on energy and protein, just for lamb growth, colostrum, udder development. There's a lot going on. Managing forage and making sure we're balancing the ration is obviously only one part of the equation with feeding ewes and making sure we have a successful lambing going forward. There's a lot of other things that go on. I like to talk about 3 rations. There's the ration the nutritionist makes up, there's the ration that is put in front of the animal, and there's the ration that the animal eats. And these can all vary due to a number of factors, whether it's forage quality, is there moulds, is it presented properly, is there something, is it kind of different from analysis even, how well chopped it is, or is there access to it, can ewes easily eat readily, or are they having to stretch or fight to get towards it. Thinking about ewe grouping, is there any hierarchies in grouping, so keeping younger ewes away from older ewes, for example, and even thin ewes away from fat ewes at times. And also feed access, so how many have we got per ring feeder if we're feeding outdoors, or to a feed fence if we're feeding in a shed. So thinking about your stocking density, feed access, feed availability. Also just keeping everything kind of clean, contaminant free. Things like water troughs and that, keeping them clean is really important as well. So lots of factors that go in apart from just the ration that we're putting in front of them. So we need to think about the wider picture.
Mary Hall is a mixed practice vet with the Galedin Veterinary Group based in the Scottish borders. Good health and hygiene are vital for a successful lambing. Mary discusses the importance of colostrum and how to mitigate against disease, as well as highlighting the importance of looking after yourself during this busy time.
So our main health concerns at lambing start pre-lambing with abortion problems, poor scanning problems, and then once we get to lambing time, we've got late term abortion, and then we've got neonatal disease, so our joint ills, our navel ills, our watery mouths. And these are the main things that we see that cause our biggest problems. We also, at lambing time, are often housing a lot of sheep, and that can exacerbate other problems that have potentially grumbled on all year. So we don't want to lose touch on lameness, on managing any iceberg diseases such as MV or OPA, and we just want to remember that all these things, if we keep notes of them, we can pick up the phone, we can have a chat with the vet and decide if we need to take any further action at that point, or how we deal with these concerns. At scanning time, we know how many lambs we are going to have. And then whatever happens at lambing time or between then and there, that is affecting our ultimate productivity on farm. So any diseases that happen at lambing time, so whether that's watery mouth, whether that's navel ill, joint ill, whether that is lambs not getting enough colostrum, or the starvation side of things, that is ultimately losing us lambs, which is knocking another lamb off that count. And that ultimately is what affects production. Trying to mitigate disease at lambing time, we're thinking about hygiene and we're thinking about colostrum. There are 2 things that we band these words around all the time, but if we can get them right, then we're going to have more lambs at the end of the day. So colostrum, if a lamb is up on its feet and is suckling within 15 minutes, that lamb has a 95% chance of still being here 90 days later. So if we can get that lamb to suckle enough colostrum, we are on the way to success. The other thing is hygiene. So every time we touch something, we're transmitting bugs, whether that's E. coli, whether that's a streptococcus that causes joint ill, we are passing that on. And that can be on like feeding tubes, on anything we're using to feed a lamb, anything that we're touching, whether we're going from lambing a sheep to then handling a 12-hour-old lamb, we are transmitting things. So if we can wear gloves, keep our hands clean, disinfect and clean our lamb feeding equipment, if we can do all these little things, we mitigate the risk of disease there at every step. Lambing outdoors has its own set of challenges. It's sometimes harder to keep on top of all those individual sheep, different ages, also knowing have they had their colostrum, have they not. We've also got the additional challenge of exposure. The elements are often against us at lambing time, we have to work with them, and it's knowing which lambs need to come inside, which lambs we know have got up, have sucked, and are on their way. So we just need to, it's got a different set of challenges, but the same principles of colostrum and hygiene still come back to the fore, as well as making sure our ewes are well enough fed and in good enough body condition that they're producing that colostrum for the lambs. Ultimately, reducing mortality at lambing time is going to be our key to success. We've got keeping everything clean, we've got our hygiene, we've got colostrum. The other thing is just thinking of that preparedness for lambing. Have we got enough staff? Have we got the shed set up? Have we cleaned out our water troughs? All these little things that add together to make it a smoother process and mean that we're in control. Equally, we know that something as simple as have we got enough meals frozen in the freezer? Because then we can go in, we can eat, and then we can come back out and do a better job. As an industry, we've come really far over the past few years with reducing the amount of antibiotics we're using and thinking carefully about when we're using them and what for. What we need to think about is how do we continue to minimise our use of antibiotics whilst using them as much as is necessary. So this comes back to starting with the yow. Is she vaccinated against clostridial diseases and that are potentially going to affect her lamb? Has she been tested for fluke and potentially treated for fluke to make sure she's going to produce the best quality colostrum? And equally, have we just asked the ewes what they're thinking of what they're eating in terms of metabolic profiling, checking where their energy's at, where their protein is at, so that we can give our lambs the best start and reduce our need for antibiotics from there. Equally, we talk a lot about keeping records, but the question is, what records do we need to keep? So actually, the best thing we can do is take 5 minutes, sit down and say, well, what actually happened at lambing last year? What went well? What did we need to use antibiotics for? And what can we do about that now that we know about it? So that can be the biggest step to managing our antibiotic use over the coming lambing period. So getting ready for lambing this year, my top 5 tips are, we want to be prepared, and that means our supplies are up to date, our water troughs are clean, our pens are built, we've got plenty Kit Kats on the shelf ready to go. Secondly, thinking about just making sure our colostrum management is ready to be top notch. We've got spares of things, we're able to keep everything clean. The most useful thing to me as a vet, if you can keep records of what you're doing. Now that doesn't mean we need to keep a pen and pencil next to every sheep. That means recording what has died and why it's died, recording what's prolapsed and what you're not going to keep because of that, recording how many sets of twins you kicked out the shed. Now these are points where you can stop and you can record that at that point because you're moving a sheep somewhere. Being prepared on a nutrition front, metabolic profiles, especially in a year where potentially our silage quality has been very, very variable. And last but not least just making sure we're prepared to look after ourselves, and we've got plenty food, plenty plans, and plenty staff.
I think we get to this time of year and we spend a lot of time thinking about the sheep and what the sheep needs, how we can keep them happy, healthy and productive. But we also need to consider ourselves in that equation. If we are not happy and healthy, we can't do the best by our livestock in the end of the day. So it really does come to just a bit of reflection on how we can make our lives easier, how we can make our lives simple and happier and enjoy what we're doing every day. So this year we're looking at the number of lambs we've lost so we can really be accountable for our mortality in the shed, but also the reasons why we're losing them. That can be quite a morbid subject and quite a hard thing to look at for a farm, because you want to just reflect on the things that are happy and healthy, but best performance comes, and a lot of enjoyment in farming comes from what we can sell at the end of the day, and mitigating those losses is quite important. So in order to make sure that that's not taxing on us as well, I've actually hidden all the numbers just so that when we're clicking them, we can't see the number go up. Lambing's going really well, so I don't think the number's going up fast, which is good. It's thinking about steps we can take. Is it just making sure that you've got good quality clothing so you're warm when you're working, making sure that you have got rest and there's somebody else there to rely on if you can. Because if you're working yourself to the ground, you can't do the best by the sheep at the end of the day. And also just thinking about like your own health. So, be good to yourself. Don't tax yourself or take it too far. It's a big thing about livestock husbandry, just ourselves as well as the stock.